a fur hat, a fur scarf, a fur muff. And all of this can be read symbolically if you wanted to, right? And Gregor's mom sees him hanging on the wall, and she obviously freaks out. She kind of passes out, right? And Greta calls out to Gregor. This is the first time that anyone's actually spoken directly to Gregor since his transformation. So put it in your notes. It takes a long time before anybody's willing to admit, I think this is Gregor. I think he's actually transformed. By the way, you can put it at 3A. For all of those movies that you know about where somebody steps into somebody else's body and gets to live for a day in somebody else's body, that is to say, goes through a transformation, right? For all of you that have ever played that game in film, we're tracking back to this story, and even earlier at 3A, we'll mention it later, but Ovid, the great Roman writer, and his Metamorphoses. So Kafka is clearly playing a game as well, right? Greta calls out to Gregor. Again, the first time anybody's spoken. Gregor then will run out of the room and into the kitchen. His father comes back from his new job. Right now, Dad's got to start working. And misunderstanding the situation, he believes that Gregor tried to attack Mom. Okay, the father is going to show some manliness here and protect his man and protect his woman. And the father will throw apples at Gregor. Now put that in your notes because that's significant. Will throw apples at Gregor and will wound him by one of them sinking, lodged there into his actual skin. And Kafka spends a lot of time making it very clear that this is a nasty wound that's going to be created by an apple that gets thrown into the side of the bug. Of course, could have been a pear, could have been a banana. But no, Kafka chooses an apple as the thing that gets thrown in. And of course, some of you already making the connection, right, and smiling. Ah, yes, in literature, apples are very interesting because the last time I checked, Milton's Paradise Lost had an apple. And when he bit into that apple, that was the moment of transformation for her, the knowledge of good and evil. Ah. See, everything is significant in this story, symbolically significant, right? Gregor will then work, wounded, to get back into his bedroom. Obviously, he's wounded. Now, the next movement of the story, and again, the story has this beautiful pendulum-like movement. Next is Gregor's family. They begin leaving the bedroom door open for just a few hours each evening so that he can watch them, right? It's almost like he has a part in the family again. Welcome back in. He does recognize, though, that his family is starting to wear down. This transformation has clearly brought a new level of poverty into the family, and that's creating problems. Even his sister begins to resent Gregor now, right? She feeds him, she cleans up with just the minimum of effort, and the family will then have to go through its trials, right? The family will replace, for example, their maid with this cheap cleaning lady who tolerates Gregor's appearance. She speaks to him every once in a while. They take on 3 boarders, adding people to live with them, which obviously requires them to move excess furniture into Gregor's room, which obviously distresses Gregor as well. And Gregor has lost his taste for the food that Greta will bring him. And he almost entirely ceases to eat. Right down in 3a, this will remind us of Leo Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich. By the end of his life, Ilyich is no longer wanting to eat any food at all, dying of that stomach cancer from his wound of falling against the window. Then one evening, now to finish the story, excuse me, then one evening, the cleaning lady will leave Gregor's door open, right? And boarders are living with him, right? Greta's been asked to play the violin for them, and so Gregor creeps out, of his bedroom to listen, obviously. The boarders, who seemed initially very interested in Greta, which the father might be excited about because then finally somebody's going to marry his daughter and he can get one less financial thing he's got to worry about. They're bored with the performance, right? Because she's not that good. But Gregor is blown away by what his sister is capable of doing. It's almost as if, interestingly, he never saw his sister until he turned into a bug. And then all of a sudden he began to appreciate. I remember one year teaching this story, I had on my side, I said, everything's about perspective, but everybody went, yeah, I'll write that in my notes. And I was like, no, I don't think we understand that at all. Let's play this game really quickly. And I had everybody just lay down on the floor with their face up and just notice the room. And I said, you're in the same room. But then they had to admit, totally different. By the way, you knew this as a child and you've forgotten it because when you were a child you loved to crawl under your bed. If you had a bed that you could do it. And you crawled under your bed. And of course it was the same room. But it's a different room when you're under your bed. That is to say, we often don't see the things we see until we see them again for the first time. And all of a sudden he's like, my sister, oh, she could play the violin. The boarders are more realistic and recognize she isn't that good. But for Gregor, he's pretty blown away by it, right? And so he comes out, and he's listening. And of course, one of the boarders will see Gregor, and they're like, dude, what's up with the huge bug? They freak out, right? The father, obviously trying to save, the notion of money, because these guys pay money to live in their house, right? The father tries to shove the boarders back into their rooms, but the three men obviously are having none of it at all. They announce that they're immediately ready to move out, right? They ain't paying no rent in a crazy house like this because of the disgust. I mean, you got bugs this big in your house, we don't want to live here, right? Greta will tell her parents, after this exchange, I think it's time for Gregor to go. We're all going to be ruined. We need to get rid of him. He's a disgusting bug, and nobody wants to even come in our house. And we got nothing with this situation. Daddy agrees, right? He wishes that Gregor could just understand them and would leave of his own accord, which is a really fascinating question. If you woke up and found yourself a bug, why wouldn't you just leave and go away because now you're a bug? That notion of the struggle to survive, even in the worst of imaginable circumstances. So, now the sad part of our story, right? Determined to help his family out, Gregor dies. I mean, he's heard this exchange. He goes back in his bedroom, and he dies. The moment that the family discovers that Gregor is dead, the family does one of these numbers. Whew, to quote the lines from T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, well, that's done and I'm glad it's over. The father kicks out the boarders. In other words, all of a sudden he takes control, maybe we would say, of his house. Kicks out the boarders. Decides to fire the cleaning lady, who, by the way, has gotten rid of Gregor's body, thrown it away in the trash. He just ends up in the trash. So for those of you that are thinking, oh, maybe there's a transformation back into being human. No, he's dead, and he just gets thrown out in the trash. But now, all of a sudden, the family changes. They decide to take a trolley ride out to the countryside. They have conversations about their finances. They've been living really kind of Spartan-like, and because they have, it's actually left them with some savings. So now all of a sudden they have a bit of money. And they decide to move to a better apartment. And at the very end, all of a sudden the young sister Greta has strength and beauty. It's returned. Parents are ready to start thinking about finding her a husband. And that's how the story ends. In other words, once he's gone, the family seems to thrive better than they did when he was alive as a bug. Now there's a couple of obvious readings of this one. One is that families have this amazing ability to get through the worst imaginable experiences and to be better and stronger on the other side. That's the optimistic reading of this text. There's obviously another kind of reading of this text as well that's a little bit more dark. All right, let's go to some final comments here at level 2, at level 2A. Let's work with our big 5 really quickly. The first one is epistemology and what you can know. Well, think about this. What is it that you can know? Knowledge. In many ways, this text says this. I would write this down, think about it. Knowledge is derived through experience, right? You don't really know what you know until you know it through experience. Think about our comments about going to kindergarten on the first day, right? Epistemologically, this text seems to suggest that the absolutist position of what you absolutely are certain that you know is a little bit dubious. You can never be totally clear. The fallibilist position, that is to say, I think I'm right but I could be wrong, probably makes more sense. What does this text say about ontology? Well, think about it. It does say that, suggests that we evolve. We have this tendency to evolve or devolve, right? That is to say, we're not always sure who we are. We think we know who we are, and then we wake up that some morning we're a bug. I've had seniors who graduate, and they recognize this in the first moment they wake up I had a student email me. He said, I woke up this morning in my dorm room for my first morning, and I woke up a bug. I mean, I feel like a bug. Everything is weird. If the lights are completely off, I wouldn't even know how to get to the door. You know what I mean? Because I got no idea. I mean, I lived in my bedroom all those years. Everything is changed. Everything is transformed. Everything is somehow metamorphosed. Altered. And I'm not totally sure who I am anymore. Ontologically speaking, like, who am I? I'm not the same person anymore. Seniors will often report that their pals of the previous year had gone on to college and came back for homecoming, and you go, dude, who are you? You dress different, you talk different, you walk different, you look different even. What's up with you? Interesting. Life is about transformations. Psychologically, what does this text say about us? Well, think about it. The power of anxiety, the power of fear, the inability sometimes to deal with the unknowns that can lead to that levels of anxiety. Sociological reading of this text, the family and the family dynamic is obviously a fascinating one. Is the family better off with Gregor dead? I mean, that's a dark reading of this story. And the student who read this story and said, gee, I'm beginning to wonder, have I been like a blood-sucking bug on the lifeblood of my family for all these years? I mean, would they be better off without me? Or is it true that families find ways to get on through the worst imaginable circumstances? Again, Kafka is like this. It's hard to interpret always. What about the question of theodicy and why bad things happen? Well, I don't know. Is it a bad thing that you wake up and you're a big beetle? Most people would say, yeah. In this story, it seems to be like, yeah. And yet, at the end of the story, the family is better off. Could be a story about sacrifice for the good of the family. There's a lot of ways to read it. But the importance of suffering is clear in this story, at least gestured at. I won't say clear, because nothing's ever clear with Kafka. But maybe it is that mantra that we've mentioned in 303 before, when bad things happen, stop asking why did it happen to me and learn why did it happen for me. Notice that for a while, Gregor is totally okay with learning how to be in this new body, in this new experience. What are some of the messages to finish now? Obviously, life is struggle. And the question is, can we learn from it? Another major message is often those closest to us, we don't really understand or know at all or appreciate at all. I mean, I've had students that read this thing and they have a brother or a sister and they're like, it's totally real. I mean, I live with this person, but I have no idea who this person is. I didn't know you could play what? You can play music? It's like, wow, I'm just stunned that there's so little I know about the people that I've spent so much time with. At 2b, the symbolism here, well, obviously the bug is a powerful symbol of existence. Well, let's put it in our notes, though. Also a symbol of alienation. To be alienated, to somehow feel like you're not a part of it anymore. You just don't fit in anymore. It's like, what's going on? I feel like I'm a bug. And of course, this is one of the major influences of this story. When you ever find yourself in a circumstance where you've never had this feeling before and you've never been there before, and you're totally foreign, that feeling of alienation, it's literally like you're a bug. It's literally like you're a bug. You know what I mean? And people are looking at you, dude, who are you? Who are you? That feeling of alienation. The first time you come home from college, sometimes you feel this way. I have seniors that go off to college and they'll come home and they'll say this, okay, my first time back home was Thanksgiving, and I walked through the door, and it's like, I'm home, but somehow it's not home, and it's not me anymore. I mean, it's not like I was. And everybody's like trying to dance around me, trying to figure out how to deal with that differences, you know what I mean? And I went away and I came back home and I have different opinions. For example, political or social or psychological opinions, I've been reading, I've been doing this and that, now all of a sudden I'm ready to talk about, I want to talk politics at the table, and Dad gives me a look like we don't talk politics at the table. Well, why don't we talk politics? What's wrong with this family? And I'm ready to, and they all look at me like, what are you? You're like a bug or something. And this story then has resonances. The irony is obvious, let's put it in our notes as well. He can't appreciate his body until he's lost it. The family can't appreciate Gregor until they've lost him. Right? And the question, obviously, the dark, ironic question is the world better off when Gregor becomes a bug and then gets thrown in the trash dump? Wow. Think about the ways that we struggle with the dullness of existence, the struggle to survive, the boredom of work. All of those, of course, come to mind as well. Finally, at 3A, I got some titles I want you to write down. They're so significant in our study in AP. One is Beckett's Waiting for Godot, G-O-D-O-T. Another is the Stoppard film, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, a text that we studied after we did our Hamlet study. And you can see on LearnStrong.net our comments about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead. Jean-Paul Sartre's No Exit comes to mind here. All of these are texts of existentialism and the theater of the absurd. I mentioned Ovid's Metamorphoses. Other Kafka stories come to mind as well. The Penal Colony. This is this bizarre story that is, I mean, it's horrific in its rendering, but it's certainly one I challenge you to read. And then finally, The Hunger Artist, which from my view is maybe the most compelling single story. If you want, write that one down and read that one on your own sometime. Beautiful, beautiful story, darkly horrifying story. Pure Kafka, pure Kafka. Finally, at 3b, the questions are obvious. What are the major transformations of your life so far? I think this is interesting. You know, I mean, this morning you woke up. You weren't a bug, supposedly. I guess we hope that you weren't a bug. And yet, to what degree are you different? Are you transforming? How are you evolving? Notice the family evolves. Notice sister evolves, right? Gregor, maybe we would say devolves. How about this one? How appreciated, I mean, this is a disturbing question to ask, but we'll ask it nonetheless. How appreciated are you by your family? I mean, really, do they recognize you as an important part of the family? To what degree do you appreciate your family? To what degree are you an integral part of that family? Or have you found yourself distancing somehow yourself from your family? And now all of a sudden, that distance is almost like you're an insect in a whole different class. You're a bug. The misunderstandings are at play here. And to what degree can you speak words that nobody understands anymore? And they kind of look at you like you are a bug, like there's something wrong with you. Or you look at them as if there's something wrong with them. The inability to communicate. Well, there you go, an introduction to Kafka's Metamorphoses. I hope that this has helped you in your study and as well maybe challenged you to think a little bit differently about your own existence. Kafka would be pleased if that were the case. Thank you.